Why do you need to trade with other countries? There are so many reasons, such as survival, or maybe you're looking for new markets, new suppliers, new production facilities, new locations, or simply because you're pursuing glory, expanding your influence or power to other parts of the world. Whatever the reason is, international trade is a common practice nowadays. Almost every country in the world is, having a certain level of trade with its neighboring countries, or with even with other parts of the world throughout the globe. So today we are going to talk about international trade theories, right, from a historical perspective, and also the evolving theories about international trade. Okay, so different approaches to international trade will produce different results. Essentially, that what we are going to talk about. There are many concepts, many theories about international trade, from hundreds of years ago, when they firstly developed certain kind of theory. But we are not saying that international trade just appeared like several hundred years ago. I think it even we could go back like thousands of years before, but maybe they didn't really have the conceptual frameworks as to that international trade strategies, or this was it the policies, systematic policies or something like that. Maybe they had not existed before several hundred years ago. But of course, international trade has been conducted for thousands of years for sure. That could be proved by the artifacts, and other archaeological findings in many parts of the world, in Mesopotamia, in India, in China, or in East Asia, and also in Europe and the United States, of course. So why is it important to discuss international trade, or to put into perspective? Because you see, this kind of intellectual foundations for trade policy, about the impacts of trade policy on the jobs and income, of course, economic growth, and also how the global trade policy has evolved for so many years. But I think the last 70 years, or after the Second World War, saw like enormous growth or improvement in the trade policy. But again, I think when we talk about the historical account, this could go back to like thousands of years ago. But international trade theories began evolving, I think, like 700 years ago, maybe 400 or 500 years ago, when countries, deliberately and systematically like planned and also implemented certain policies in their, as part of their national policies about the international trade with other countries. And also foreign direct investment would be quite like crucial part in the equation, or in the analysis, because maybe we are not going to talk about it right now. Like trade is part of the balance of trade is part of the current account. So current account is inversely related to financial account, or the foreign direct investment. So if you have a surplus policy, if your balance of trade is surplus, and consequently, or most likely, your current account is positive or surplus, then you have a negative or a deficit financial account. So the money has to go out, right? Because that's the balance, right? Part of the equation. Meaning that if you export more than import, meaning that you you gain more like foreign currencies, then financial account has to be negative in the sense that you have to send the money away. See what's in the case of China, they always have for the last maybe 30 years or 30 or 40 years, they always have a surplus balance of trade, high export, lower import. So I have surplus balance of trade and consequently surplus current account. But that has to be balanced with deficit financial account, meaning that the money has to go to other places. That's why in the case of China, they have the OBOR policy, the One Belt, One Road policy, for example, that they're going to other developing countries to invest, to lend out the money as soft loans to build infrastructure and other related policies. On the other hand, if you look at the case of the United States, this is a country that has like deficit balance of trade, so they import more than they export, meaning that there's a deficit balance of trade, deficit current account. But to balance that, they must have a surplus financial account, meaning that the money now foreign direct investment has to come to the country, because that's the organic relationship, like natural relationship. If you have a deficit current account, especially because of the deficit balance of trade, then we need to finance. If you import more than you export, you need money. Right? How to finance that? So you need foreign direct investment as part of the account, right? The financial account. So you get the money from like foreign investment, and that can be used to finance your net import. But we are not focusing on that part, like about the balance of payments, because today we are going to talk about international trade policy. Although again, it's related also to the balance of payments. This kind of the equation at large. So the overview here, this is what we are going to see. Mercantilism, and then a theory of absolute advantage by Adam Smith. We're talking about free trade here. Free trade, I think we'll look into each theory in more details in subsequent sections. But in this section, we are looking at the big picture. Mercantilism, theory of absolute advantage, that actually the Wealth of Nations, his book in 1776 really opened up the awareness, and also the discussion on international trade, trade with another country or with other countries. So like free trade, what is free trade? It's the definition of free trade, as the name suggests. Of course, this is a situation or a policy where a government doesn't influence, doesn't interfere the trade between countries or among countries. So the government doesn't try to deter, like trade using the tariffs or quotas or some blockage, blocking imports from other countries. So they don't do that. That's why we call it like free trade system. And I think major countries, major continents in the world, we could say that free trade has been the norm. Of course, not 100%, but it's closer to free trade policy or situation around the world, rather than the restricted trade situation that we had maybe some 100 years ago. Okay, then we'll see David Ricardo with the comparative advantage theory, and then Heckscher-Ohlin, right? Another, the next concept or international trade theory. And then we'll continue with the product life cycle theory, new trade theory, and end it with the Porter's diamond. That's what the concept of theories from historical perspective, and also the again, the evolving thoughts on international trade that we are going to discuss today. So we'll begin with mercantilism. Mercantilism, see that in the mid 16th century. So that's about like 600 years ago, 5 to 600 years ago. So at that time, many countries, especially the one in, I think in Europe, they realized that the only way to earn money, and at that time they were using the pure gold system. So it's like gold and silver. How could they earn money? They had to export like goods, products, and services. Maybe services were not that dominant at the time. So goods would be the dominant part, the dominant type of products. So what is the main characteristic of mercantilism? It says that it's the country's best interest to maintain a trade surplus. Okay, so essentially they're saying that if you want to be prosperous, you want to be wealthy, then we need to export more, and if possible, we need to limit import. So it's like pursuing export, limiting import. Right? That's the basic characteristic, the basic tenet of mercantilism. And you'll be surprised to know that some countries still believe in this, right? Not realizing that the world has changed. Like maybe certain countries, even today, they just want to say, I want to export more. I want to produce, I want to export more, I want to sell my products, but I want to limit someone else's, products by exerting, by imposing quotas or tariff or something like that. Not realizing that, no, the world has changed. If you do something like that, you impose a tariff or quota, or you are blocking someone else's products, then definitely they will do the same thing to your products. So something unorganic, something intentional to block import, to push our export, will not be successful. It won't be successful in the modern times. Yeah, it's very different, right? In the 16th century, some countries had like much stronger military, and at that time, you imagine military power was so different than it is today. I mean, if you're talking about today, the balance of power has been quite, quite equal. I know, of course, we know that the strongest military still belongs to the United States. The second might be China or maybe Russia. But in terms of the power, we know that nobody could win over another country if they have to fight physically, because the nuclear power, whoever wins will lose as well, right? Because the world will end. It's very different. In the 16th century, some countries had stronger military power, stronger knowledge. Maybe they had more talents, more scientists. Like maybe in the 16th century, we were talking about Portugal, Spain, and of course the British Empire, France also, I guess at that time, and many other stronger countries than the others. So at the time, they were saying that it was the best interest for the country if they could enhance export and limit import. Right. So they would accumulate money, right, gold and silver, and consequently, right, accordingly, wealth, prestige, and power. Right. So they would impose whatever, right? They would limit import. They would impose the tariffs, quotas, some other blocking mechanisms, and at the same time, they would try to subsidize or to support, right, to put in place policies that supported export. David Hume, he pointed out an inconsistency in the mercantilist doctrine. Why is that? Because look at this one, right? The balance of trade surplus, okay, would essentially produce inflation. But we have to know that at the time, they use the gold system. So this kind of inflation would be temporary because they have the price specie flow mechanism. Right? The specie flow mechanism would regulate, the inflation. For example, you export more than import, meaning that you earn more money, and the increasing amount of money relative to the amount of goods and services in the country will produce inflation. Right? So a general increase in product prices in a country, we call it inflation. So we have inflation during that time, in the 16th century, in the 17th or something like that, somewhere there. Whenever they had inflation, it would the specie flow mechanism would regulate everything. So you have higher inflation, and then prices would be higher at home, meaning that your domestic products will be less competitive afterward. You can imagine, right? So you have a lot of money, but then inflation goes up, then your domestic products become less competitive. What's the meaning there? Export will decline, but import will go up because imported products will be relatively cheaper. Right? So you start importing, but at the same time, the domestic products will improve, right, in quality, because you need to be more efficient. You need to be cost efficient and of a higher quality or something like that. So after some time, the situation will reverse again, right? Imported products will become more and more expensive. On the other hand, domestic products will be cheaper and cheaper and with better quality. So then the cycle will return to the balance of trade surplus. Now you export more again, you import less, and so on. Okay, so but the point here is that David Hume was saying that the mercantilism didn't really pay attention to details. They didn't look into the long-term consequences of this policy, right? Because you just want to earn more money by exporting, by limiting import. But you have to remember also the monetary side, right? The monetary policy side. You export more, you earn more money, and that will create inflation, and inflation will kick in another cycle. Okay, and another flaw, right, with the mercantilism, according to the David Hume and other opponents of the mercantilism, is that mercantilism always assumes that it's a zero-sum game, meaning that you can only win at the expense of another country. But in real life, that might not be accurate, might not be entirely accurate, because we could have this kind of game, right? The positive sum game, a situation where all countries actually benefit from the trade. Right? So mercantilism assumes that you can only win by defeating another country, so at the expense of another country or other countries. But actually, in real life, we could have a better system, like the positive sum game. Okay, so mercantilism, I think it ended, not really ended, but I think the world shifted to another concept when Adam Smith published his famous book, The Wealth of Nations. So he called it absolute advantage. Absolute advantage. So this is an easy concept. It's saying that if you have a country, it's better to specialize or focus on a product, a certain product, by which we have absolute advantage. Okay. Simple example, quick example here. We have the chocolate here, cocoa, and we have rice. Okay. So to produce a ton of cocoa, Ghana requires 10 units or 10 resources, whereas South Korea needs 40. On the other hand, for producing rice, a ton of rice, Ghana requires 20 units, whereas South Korea 10 units. Okay, so just using common sense here. So for Ghana, you see, that will be easier. Was Ghana better at? Cocoa, right? Because to produce cocoa, Ghana only needs to spend 10 units, whereas South Korea 40. On the other hand, for the rice, for rice production, South Korea could produce a ton of rice at 10 units, while Ghana needs 20. So it's better for Ghana to focus on producing cocoa and South Korea rice. And they could exchange, right? This kind of specialization, and then they exchange. So they will be happy together because they will be more efficient, and yeah. So the world will be better with the trade. And you could imagine that if we don't have the trade, see, like assuming that Ghana and South Korea each would spend 50% of resources on cocoa and 50% on rice. So can you see here? If we have 200 units, so 100 units would be given or would be allocated for cocoa, and the remaining 100 for rice. So 100 divided by 10, of course, is 10. See here, right? 10. And 100 divided by 20 is 5. Right, see here, 5. And we do the same thing for South Korea, it's 2.5 and 10. So in total, you see the total production of the world, 12.5 and 15. Okay. But with the trade, remember, with the trade, we are saying that it's better that all resources of Ghana are allocated for cocoa, meaning that we have here 200 divided by 10. 200 divided by 10 would be what, 20? All right, 20. And 200 divided by 10 also here. It's better for South Korea to focus on rice production. So 200 units, 200 divided by 10 is 20 also. So in total, you see the total output of the world, 20 and 20. So it's larger, right? So it benefits, this kind of trade benefit both countries actually. Okay, so both nations essentially enjoy the trade. So this is the main, the thrust of The Wealth of Nations, that book by Adam Smith in 1776, right? So much better for both countries to focus on the product, right, at which they have competitive, or they have absolute advantage, and then they do the trade. So we call it what? A positive sum game. Actually, both countries benefit from the trade. Okay, this is Adam Smith, and yes, sometime later, we got another, student of Adam Smith named David Ricardo. So David Ricardo came up with the comparative advantage. So it's slightly different here. It's a comparative advantage, whereas Adam Smith theory was called the absolute advantage, the theory of absolute advantage. So what is the difference here? See the word comparative, as the name suggests, we see the word comparative there. So we have to compare. So here's the reality, right? According to David Ricardo, reality shows that there are many countries better at many things than another country or other countries. So they are better at producing many things, but still, according to David Ricardo, it's better for the country to focus on a product at which it has the best advantage or the highest advantage. That's why we call it comparative advantage. So let me illustrate to you, okay? If you, let's say, someday you become a CEO, you become a CEO and you have a secretary, okay? Secretary, and it turns out that when you start having this professional relationship, actually, you are better at many things, right, than your secretary. For example, you might be better at analyzing strategy, right? Strategic analysis. So you're better at strategic analysis. But let's say you're also better at typing, right? It turns out that your secretary is not better than you in typing, you're still better than your secretary. But the question is, if you have to choose, because you have everyone has 24 hours a day for activities, right? So if you have to choose as the CEO, it's better for you to focus on strategic analysis and your secretary on typing, right? Typing letters, making documents or something. Although you know that actually even you're better at typing than your secretary. But again, according to the comparative advantage, it's better that you focus on something that offers a higher value, okay? Higher added values than the other activity. Okay, you got the idea. So let's see here. Assume that Ghana is more efficient in the production of both cocoa and rice. You see, this is exactly the situation. So like in the previous example, you are better than your secretary in strategic analysis, but also in typing. But of course, you still, it's better that you focus on something with a higher added value, like making strategic decisions than focusing on typing, right? So let the secretary focus on typing and you on the strategic analysis. That's a common sense. So in this case, Ghana has an absolute advantage in everything, right? In both products. See here, so they are better at everything. So see, this is the example. We change the example now with the cow situation. So Ghana is better at producing cocoa, you can see here, and also better at producing rice. Okay, so according to Adam Smith, then Ghana could produce cocoa and rice, and Korea doesn't produce anything. So that doesn't sound right. It doesn't ring a bell. So so what should we do then? So it's better to use the comparative advantage theory by David Ricardo. Okay, so once again, without the trade here, you could imagine without the trade. So let's say they put, I don't know, like 150 units on cocoa and 50 units on rice. Okay, and South Korea is maybe doing similar things, okay, equivalent things. Look at the total production, like what we did before, 12.5 and 12.5. Okay, but when they specialize, okay, let's look at the situation here. For the case of cocoa, Ghana could produce it with 10 units, whereas South Korea 40 units. So the ratio is 1:4, 1/4, right? What about this one? Ghana could produce the rice at 13 1/3, whereas South Korea 20 units. So what is the ratio here? About 13 to 20, right? 13 per 20. So definitely, which one is stronger for Ghana? The cocoa, right? Cocoa production is much, it offers a stronger advantage to Ghana because the ratio is 1:4, very strong ratio there. So 1:4 units. On the other hand, for the rice, it's at 13 to 20. So still, it's better for Ghana to produce or to focus on cocoa, whereas, South Korea had better focus on rice production, right? Because although South Korea is losing also in terms of absolute advantage in producing rice, but in the comparative advantage, the loss is less, right? The loss is minimum compared to the case of cocoa. So by this kind of specialization and trade, you see what happens here? is 15 and 1375. So again, the world output is much better if they focus on their comparative advantage and then do the trade. Okay. So output is higher. Both countries now benefit from the trade. And again, the world output increases, meaning that we could consume more. Everybody's happy. Okay. So what's the main point here? Positive sum game. Okay. Positive sum game. And we could say that with this kind of, absolute advantage and then comparative advantage, the world production is higher, is greater with the trade. And of course, with unrestricted free trade, than it is with restrictive trade, for sure. Right? Of course, the absolute advantage we know is major weakness. In the case, in real life, many countries are actually having absolute advantages than other countries in producing many things. But then came the comparative advantage, saying that although you have a lot of absolute advantages in producing many things, but it's still better for you to choose, the best, what's that, the strongest advantage that you have than other countries. Right? Remember the what's that, a CEO and secretary, or yeah, you can just imagine other examples, like similar examples. So it's better to focus on something that you could do better. Although actually you are better at many things than your counterparties or your neighbors or something. But there's nothing perfect here. There are some, some reservations here, some weaknesses that you could point out. There are many unrealistic assumptions. For example, it assumes a simple world where there are only two countries with two goods. But in economics, we usually have this kind of like typed assumption, actually not to lower the power of the conclusion, actually, but on the other hand, by tighten up the assumptions, right? By having tight assumptions, actually we want to make sure that what we are talking about is of the utmost truth. So let me give you an illustration, okay? Let's assume that I want to know whether eating something, maybe eating noodles, okay? Eating Korean noodles, how is it related to your, what's that, maybe your score, okay? Your test score. So if I let my subjects, the participants of my experiment, so I let my subjects to do anything they want, right, for the whole week. Then I give a test, right, to them, and some of them get high scores, some like lower scores or something like that. How could I conclude that their scores are related to their their noodles consumption? I couldn't do it. Why? Because there are so many other factors that confound the conclusion or the activities. So how should I do it? How should I do it? How should I have done it, right, to be more precise? So it's better for me, right, to maybe I have a subject, or could be more than one. Let's say I have a particular subject. I could take the subject to a house, okay? So I confine the person in the house, so he or she cannot get out. He or she can't get out of the house, so it's in the house. And even better, if I want to tighten the assumption, okay, I should lock the person up in a room, so he or she can get out of the room. And even stronger, okay, even better, if I could tighten the person on the chair, you know, that he or she is sitting on the chair, and I tight him or her up, and the person can't do anything else. So I would feed the subject with like Korean noodles for the whole week, maybe. So nothing else, okay? No studying, no watching movies, nothing, right? Just sitting down and then eat the Korean noodles for the whole week. Then I give the guy a test. So I could assume that if the test is high or the test is low compared to other subjects or other control groups, then I could assume, or not sure, I could conclude that there's a relationship, or there isn't a relationship between eating noodles and the test score. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? That's why in economics we have a lot of tight assumptions. Tight assumptions don't actually don't jeopardize the conclusion, but actually the other way, right? The other way around. Actually, with tight assumptions, we want to make sure that if we assume we have the tight assumptions, we want to make sure that what we are talking about has the utmost truth, because we are what's that, controlling many other factors. So we don't let other factors to affect the relationship. So we want to see the pure relationship. Okay, but still, right, if we're talking about real life, you may say that, okay, the comparative advantage theory has many unrealistic assumptions, like only 2 countries and 2 goods, no transportation costs, and we don't consider differences in the prices of resources in different countries. The prices of production facilities, the land, the labor, capital, and something like that, right? So we don't pay attention to that. But again, by controlling those factors, we are saying that now we assume that those factors are the same, they don't affect this relationship, and we want to look at the relationship between comparative advantage and the trade results. Okay, so not realistic, but no, actually that could achieve the purest form of results, purest results. And another assumption is that resources can move freely, right, from the production of one good to another. For example, you have resources to make cocoa, right, the chocolate, and resources to produce rice. So you're assuming that they can move easily. If I cancel the cocoa production, I can ask them to move to rice, quickly. And in real life, of course, it's not necessarily true. And they also, this also assumes a constant return to scale. I hope you understand, right? Return to scale means you could, for example, you increase the production factor by 1 unit. That 1 unit would produce the increase in output of the same proportion as the previous one. And for example, you have 10 units. If you increase your production factors from 10 units to 11, right? It's expected that the output will go up from, I don't know, maybe 100 to 200. But if you increase your production factors from 11 to 12, which is the same 1 unit, right? So 10 to 11, 11 to 12, they increase 1 unit. So you assume that the output will increase from 200 to 300. Okay, so the same, you understand what I'm saying, right? So the same scale. So the production factor is increasing by certain units, then the output will increase by certain units. Now the same scale, right, from the previous one. But it's not necessarily true, because we have the fatigue factor, right? Fatigue factor, and also the limit, limit factor. You have a certain limit to skills, and also availability of labor or capital or something like that, right? So we have limits to many things, actually. Another one is that the comparative advantage assumes that each country has a fixed stock of resources. Okay, and free trade doesn't change the efficiency. And again, in real life, this might not be true, because if we have free trade, efficiency will change. Okay, because yeah, you could get something with more efficient production somewhere else, or you could shift, right, to another country or something like that. But of course, in comparative advantage, we assume away that part of the story, and it doesn't assume, or it doesn't pay attention to the effects of trade on income distribution within a country. And in real life, of course, it will affect income distribution, because again, yeah, if you earn more money, you export more, then you get more money. But on the other hand, if you import more, especially the lower price products, maybe that will affect the wage condition domestically, something like that, right? But again, comparative advantage doesn't pay attention to that one. So what are the counter arguments here? Counter arguments: immobile resources. Yeah, actually, resources don't always move, easily or smoothly from one activity to another. But in real life, we know that this is not true, right? We couldn't just move resources, whatever it is, like labor, capital, technology, even technology. We can't necessarily, we are not necessarily able to move from one activity to another quickly. And the process creates like friction and human suffering. So we have to relearn something, review something. So yeah, not necessarily true. So resources could be immobile, right? That's what essentially the slide is saying. And also diminishing return. So diminishing return is the opposite to constant return to scale. Right? If a constant return to scale says that, the increase in inputs will always be followed by the same, the constant increase in outputs. But actually, we have diminishing returns here. Right? For example, maybe a quick example here. Yeah, like 10 units. 10 units are required to increase the cocoa production from 12 to 13 tons. Okay. What about 11 units? 11 units, yeah, maybe needed to increase from 13 to 14 tons. You see, it's not constant at 10. And to increase the output from 14 to 15, we need 12 units. Okay, so we need more inputs, right? We need more production factors to achieve the same increase in output. So we call it a diminishing return. Right? Why? Because again, we have limits to everything. We have the fatigue factor. We have limits to the machinery, also labor capability, to the knowledge level and some other things. Right? So diminishing return is more logical. Right? It makes more sense because not all resources are of the same quality. This is so true. Resources, between countries, definitely they are not of the same quality. Either the quality of, the land, the capital, and even labor, right? Maybe in the beginning, especially. So resources might have like different quality, and different goods use resources in different proportions. So we can't suddenly assume that we can move from one product to another, but we can maintain the efficiency or the quality or the results. And see the reality here, most countries produce a range of goods. But this is not saying, yeah, we are not saying, actually, this is not really appropriate, I guess. I think countries specialize, okay? Somehow we have specialization, but of course we also produce a range of goods. We not unlike the conclusion, proposed by Comparative Advantage that says that it's better for you to focus on this one and let the other products like be produced by other countries. I think that's not entirely realistic. So we still focus on certain products, but we also produce other products, but maybe to less extent. So if you're asking whether it's the best scenario for all countries in the world, it may not be the best case scenario, but I think no countries want to take the risk by not producing something at all, relying on other countries to do it at all, and we just do this one. We just specialize on this particular product, and we don't care about other products. Let other countries produce it. Well, I think no country will ever do that. Right? So we still produce other, range of goods and products and goods and services, but certainly we have certain specialized products that we emphasize, that we want to promote. Again, another comparative advantage here, the extension or the some disagreement, some maybe you could say weaknesses, the dynamic effects and economic growth. So if you open up your economy or your trade, most likely that could generate like dynamic gains, not static gains, right? But dynamic. Why? Because look at the first one, right? Free trade could increase your stock of resources, as so increased supplies of labor and capital would come to you. Okay, so so your resources, suddenly become more and more abundant because of the free trade. Okay? So if the country is free, and you could you portray yourself as a free country with free trade, with a lot of support and encouragement for entrepreneurship, then suddenly you find that a lot of labor and also capital would come to your place, right, to your country. I think this is so true for the case of the United States for so many years, right? It's a free country, free trade, a lot of freedom in academic, in speech, in everything. So we're seeing that a lot of labor and capital, like good talents, good capital, a strong capital coming from everywhere to the country. And also free trade will also increase the efficiency with which you use your resources, right? Because you could learn more from the best practices. And also by having trade, that is, if you think that it's not that efficient to produce a particular product, it's better for you to import, to buy it from somewhere, and you're focusing on something that you could do better. Okay, you could you could imagine like so essentially what I'm trying to say is that we don't need to win in everything. We don't need to win in everything. We just need to win in like bigger things. It's like, I don't know, like in maybe in Germany, you can imagine in Germany you have top products like luxury cars. You have the equipment business, the machinery business is one of the best in the world, from German machinery, Mercedes, the all the luxury cars owned by Volkswagen and some other things. And although like Germany could produce whatever television sets or other things, but it might not be efficient. So it's better to train your mechanics, your engineers, to be to be leading, right? To be champions in bigger things. So if you want to win in many things, finally you're winning small things, right? You're winning a lot of small things. That's not really, not really interesting in the in the modern times. So it's better to win big, right? I just imagine you have I don't know, the cycling competition, and you are in a Grand Tour. If you're in Grand Tour, you want to win the big one, right? You want to win the queen stages, okay? So it doesn't really matter you win the small stages. You never win the general classification because you won the small stages, but the queen stages are the one that there are many top cyclists are focusing on. The same thing here, very similar analogy. So we are saying that we have dynamic gains. It's not static, but it's dynamic. So whenever you have free trade, you will attract a lot of like labor and capital also. And when you have free trade, you could get something with like more efficient prices, not necessarily producing at home, but you could get it from somewhere else with like the most efficient prices. But then you could allocate your resources to something that you could win bigger, right, in the real world. So we are saying that we could shift the production possibility frontier. We can shift it, upward, make it like stronger. So we have the multiplier effect of the free trade on economic growth, on resources, on efficiency, and all other things. So the guy came, like Paul Samuelson, the Nobel Prize laureate. Paul Samuelson, so he was saying that, you see, look at the relationship between like United States and China, okay? So when they first started, United States had been a rich country, of course, so many years already. China was, at that time, right, when they began this kind of trading relationship, China was a developing country. United States had been a developed country, had been a rich country. So productivity improved after the introduction of free trade, for sure, right? So what is happening here? Lower prices that the American are enjoying, by importing products from China because of the free trade. Might be offset by the fact that it could lower the real wage rates in the United States. Okay, so this is like how to say, it's like the dilemma there. We have the dilemma. So if you're a rich country and you're having a trade with a less developed country, and you know that buying products from that particular country would be highly efficient, would be very beneficial to the country, because you can get the products at cheaper prices. So you import, your citizens are enjoying cheaper products, and of course they could focus on something else. But in Samuelson's observation, he was saying that this benefit, this enjoyment might be offset by the possibility that actually the wage rate will be lower in that area. For example, if you know that importing TV sets from China is better than producing by yourself because it's more efficient there, and television set is not high tech anymore. You're thinking there's no use that you strengthen the TV set production. What is it for? TV set is not even a crucial product anymore, because nowadays we have a lot of other alternatives, like the laptop, the tablet, or some other things. But still, you buy a lot of like TVs from China or from other developing countries. But the benefit could be offset by the fact that the wage rate will be lower in the TV set production in the United States or in some nearby industry like electronic devices or something, because we know that we could buy a lot of things cheaper from China and from other countries, meaning that the domestic production wouldn't be the focus anymore, and demand for employees or labor in that area would be lower, right? But of course, this is not entirely true either, right, Samuelson? But remember that when a researcher says something, the statement is bound or is bounded with certain situation, certain time frame as well. So I think Samuelson didn't really realize that by the lowering wage rate in a certain industry, because we could buy comparable products from other countries at cheaper prices, actually the domestic labor, right, could shift to other higher value jobs. For example, we know that TV sets are not having higher demand anymore, so we could buy it from South Korea, from China, or from India, or from anywhere else. So that would suppress the wage rate of electronic devices labor. But actually, that labor could shift to, I don't know, to other industries with higher potential value, higher added value, maybe to fintech industry, right, the financial technology industry, or to biochemistry, right, to electronic vehicles, or something else, right, whatever. So actually, we are losing the wage, we are losing the demand for labor in that area, in that sector, but they could shift, right? They could be moved to other more productive sectors. That's the, I think, the thing that we have to take into account. So evidence between the link between trade and growth, I think this is undeniable that countries that adopt a more open international trade policy enjoy a higher level of growth rate. Okay, and higher growth rate will raise the level of income and living standards. Okay, so it's definitely better. A country with like more open trade, enjoys better living standards. Will raise income levels because we have more. On the one hand, you could enjoy all products from all over the world at cheaper prices. But on the other hand, knowing that we are not efficient in producing something, it's better to shift, right, to focus on something else where we could sell more. We have more like comparative advantage or something like that, right? Okay, so we just saw the mercantilism, and then absolute advantage, comparative advantage with the proponents and also opponents to those theories. Now we'll continue with the next one, okay? The Heckscher-Ohlin. So Eli Heckscher, I see the name here, Eli Heckscher and Bertie Ohlin. In 1919 and 1933, they argued that comparative advantage arises from differences in national factor endowment. So Heckscher and Ohlin believe that the endowment, the factor, okay, production factor endowments are the key to achieving the comparative advantage, right? So they're saying that countries will export something, or the goods that harness, okay, that make use of production factors that are locally abundant. So they're saying that if you are endowed with a lot of natural resources, right? Many countries in Africa, in Asia. So most likely they would export those goods. Okay, so naturally, right, the natural resource. If you're endowed with abundant production factors, if you have a lot of labor, then most likely you will you will export something that is like labor intensive, right? Labor intensive rather than capital intensive. So that's what they are saying. However, this was rebutted by Leontief. So Vasily Leontief, right? The paradox there in 1953, they're saying that look at an example of the United States. So they were abundant in capital. Okay, so capital. So we would imagine that the United States should be or should have been the exporter of capital-intensive goods and importer of labor-intensive goods. But see, according to Leontief research, he finds that actually U.S. exports of the capital-intensive goods were less than its imports. So, yeah, I don't know, it's a paradox or something. I have to ask the economists. So it's like a dilemma, something like paradox. You're saying that this country is endowed with a certain thing, but the fact shows that no, in the case of the United States, their export of capital-intensive goods were less than the imports, right? The imports of capital-intensive goods. Okay, so could be wrong, right? So essentially, Leontief, right? He rebutted the theory by Heckscher-Ohlin that says that usually a country will be focusing on a certain product where it has like abundant production factors. We call it the endowment, right? The factor endowments. And so essentially, with the emergence of Leontief paradox, we start thinking again, like among all the theories, actually, the comparative advantage makes a lot of sense, right? It could predict the trade patterns with relatively good accuracy, right? But again, we're not saying that the Heckscher-Ohlin theory is completely inaccurate. Of course, in many instances, in many situations, it has its merit. It could explain a lot of things with the endowment, right? The factors endowment factor. But in certain countries, in certain situations, it doesn't really explain well. That's, I think, the point. Okay, the next theory, that product life cycle. Okay, product life cycle theory by Raymond Vernon. The product life cycle. So this is easy to imagine. When you mention the phrase, life cycle, it means that it could change from one stage to another, right? That's why we call it life cycle, right? Product life cycle. So it could change, it could shift from one stage to another. So what Raymond Vernon is saying essentially is that here, right? So as products mature, both because of both the sales, the market, and also the production place, the production location might change, right? Because of the changing stage or changing stages and the direction of trade. Right? For example, look at this one, right? New consumer products. So early in the life cycle, many of the many of the new consumer products began in the United States. Because of many factors, the entrepreneurial freedom in the country is vast population, right? Large population that it has, and high technology that it has enjoyed for so many decades, and also the income per capita, which is quite high in for example in the United States. So many products started there, right? Began in the United States, but later, you see, things will change. Like over time, demand for the new product would grow also in other advanced countries. Okay, so we're saying that let's take one example, maybe the mobile phone. Right, the first time the mobile phone was around, I think it was for civilians. Okay, it was in 1991 or 1990, around that time, right? So we had like Motorola, like one of the first developers of mobile phone. But yeah, when the time passed, other countries also showed a lot of big interest, right, in the new innovation. So other developed countries would have a strong demand for it as well, like Japan, Germany, France, Great Britain, and some other countries. So demand would be created there. And when they see that the foreign producers, if they see that this is quite profitable, quite worthwhile, worth doing, so they would begin producing also in their home markets. Right? That's why then appear several other brands like Nokia, like Siemens, right, Ericsson, then Samsung, and all other other brands in the world. And today we have almost every country could produce a mobile phone. so the market shares of producers have changed over time. If you notice, right, at first Motorola started the whole mass production, but now who's the first? I think between Samsung and maybe Huawei or something, right, of China, right? Samsung and Apple was in the top 4 or 5 in terms of the market share. So look at the third point here. So production within other developed countries will begin to limit the potential for exports from the United States. So you see, like the product, let's say the product was developed in the United States because again, the innovation, the entrepreneurship, and also the level of income. But whenever the product is interesting enough to other countries, other developed countries will catch up, right? They'll have demand for it, but at the end of the day, they will start their own production, right? And because of that process, many other developed countries have produced this kind of product, that it will become more and more standardized. You see, like mobile phone. In 1990, I remember not many people could have access to mobile phone because of its high price. Right? Not many people could afford to buy it. But nowadays, I think almost everybody, and even many people have more than one mobile phone. So nowadays, they have 2 or 3 or something. So it has become very standardized. And so what's next? Even the producing countries, they start producing here and there, okay? Even they start producing to the United States as well. And because of the worldwide, adoption of the product, and cost has been an issue because of the competition for cost efficiency, then other developing countries will be the key to the competition. So they would yeah, they would have a production advantage. So the big manufacturers have to go to developing countries to take advantage, take advantage of the low production cost or something like that. So this is called the product life cycle. Quite easy to understand, right? So it might start somewhere in the most innovative country, and it's enjoyed by the high income country, like the what's that the early adopter. But then other developed countries with sufficiently enough demand will follow suit, right? They will catch up. They have the demand, and if they see it interesting and profitable, worth producing, then they will produce. And even the inventing country will now import from those countries. And because of, again, the competition, right, the stiff competition with respect to cost efficiency and some technological issues as well, then developing countries will play a big role, because many producers will shift there to capitalize on the low production costs there. Okay. So you see some examples here. Historically, the US was the first initiator, inventor, and also innovator in whatever photocopier like Xerox. But Xerox has been merged with Fuji, right? Fuji Xerox nowadays. And mobile phones, also the video game, I think the first, I don't know, the Atari or something in the past. But now you see the game industry is dominated by Japanese producers. They have the PlayStation, Sony PlayStation, they have the Nintendo Switch, something like that. Although, many other countries still have their own gaming systems, but the giant producers, the giants in the industry, are the Japanese video game producers. And what about the smartphone? Again, it started maybe in the United States with Motorola, and then in Europe with Siemens, Ericsson. But now who's the biggest manufacturer? Is Samsung, right? The biggest in terms of market share. Of course, not in terms of revenues, right? In terms of revenues, Apple is still the leading company, because they sell fewer units, but they charge expensive prices, so their revenues is the first, right? The largest revenues, but not the first in terms of market share. And like tablet computers, smartphones, digital cameras, they are not dominated by their inventing country anymore, or inventing firm. But it has been dominated by countries, by producers from many other countries, right? So I think that's the nature of innovation. That's why I really like this theory, right? Product life cycle. I think it's so realistic in real life, because look at General Electric, right? General Electric used to be the strongest company in producing the lights, the LCD lights, the iron, many things, the air conditioner and everything. So we call it GECP in the past, General Electric Consumer Products. But they sold the division. Why? Because it dropped, right? It's not that competitive anymore, because it has been a lot of competitors from China, from Japan, from Korea, from everywhere, right? Eastern Europe, or some, many countries have been more and more competitive in consumer products. So they dropped that one, and they're focusing on the future industries like biochemistry, I don't know, like e-vehicles or something like that. So this, I think, natural, right, for a company. You want to always innovate, to invent new things, to commercialize it, and of course, it becomes like profitable innovation. So we want to continue to do it. So we don't want to stick with one thing by having this kind of mindset, like I don't want to lose out my position. I'm the first. I was the first, and I will be the first forever. It is so that mentality doesn't really hold water nowadays. So we have to be smarter. So if it's not interesting anymore, then divest. Right? We divest it. We just we don't want to hold on. We drop it, and we use the proceed. The amount that we could sell the subsidiary or the unit. We focus on something else. Okay, next one, the new trade theory. New trade theory is saying that um, the key factor here is economies of scale. Economies of scale means with certain amount of inputs, you try to get as much output as possible, right? You try to extend. Okay, with certain amount of input, you want to gain, or you want to achieve as much output as possible. So what is the main tenets of the new trade theory? Is saying that by the economies of scale, trade can increase the variety of goods available to consumers, right? Because if we could capitalize on the economies of scale, and you see, like global market may be able to support only a small number of enterprises. So new trade theory essentially emphasizes the first mover advantage. So the theory says that we need to be always try to be the first, because we'll enjoy the first mover advantages. So we start the story here. Imagine a world without trade. So the national market is small and demand is small as well. Okay. So if we have like only domestic market exists, then the demand will be quite small because actually it depends on your country. I think that's the benefit of having a big country like China. I see like 1.5 billion, or India with 1.4. So their domestic markets are large enough. Can you like I said, European Union, I think you have like 750 million people, but if you do it like for each country, it might not be big enough, right? Because in France, maybe you have, I don't know, like 60 million or something, 60 to 70. Germany might have like 80 something, 85. But when you combine in the European Union, you have like 750 million. Or Southeast Asia, look at Southeast Asia. If you talk about a single country like Singapore only has like 5 million people, but Southeast Asia has 500 million, right? So that's a good number for a regional market. So when the national market is small, then demand will be small. Right? But if you could trade with other countries, or you could make a regional market, then the market would be large enough. Right? Would be large enough to achieve the economies of scale. I see the point there. If the market is too small, we can't achieve the economies of scale, right? Because the demand is small. But when you have a bigger market, for example, in the regional union, right? The monetary union, or in the economic community, something like that, then you have a larger market, making it more efficient, and you could achieve the economies of scale. So if you could achieve economies of scale, of course the cost will be lower, right? And you could produce more variety, more variety of products. So knowing that we need the economies of scale, new trade theory really believe in first mover advantages. Right? The advantages of being a first mover, right? Essentially, that's what we are saying. So because if you're a first mover, most likely you could enjoy the economies of scale first, right? So you'll be the first to to capitalize on the economies of scale before other players come in. So it's like you don't have many competitors at first. So we call it like blue ocean. If you find a blue ocean situation, so you could be, you could earn more profit. You don't need to focus too much on defense because you don't have many competitors. But when they begin coming in, you have a certain what's that, grasp, okay, certain grasp in the industry. You have your permanent market share, so to speak. The market share that you may not lose out easily because you have been quite entrenched, right, in the industry. So something like that, right? So again, this theory really emphasizes the first mover advantages, because when you become a first mover, you could harness the economies of scale. So implications here. Variety of products could be available to consumers in each nation because of the trade. Okay, so if you have larger demand because you have larger market and you are the first mover, then you enjoy a lot of like economies of scale, benefits from the economies of scale. That's why you could, if you become the first mover, most likely you could dominate the industry. And it's saying that this new trade theory is at odds with Heckscher-Ohlin theory. So still remember, right, according to Heckscher and Ohlin, they are saying that a country would focus on a certain product because of the factor endowments. But according to new trade theory, this is not because of the factor endowments, right? Not because of that, but because of the economies of scale, the first mover advantage or advantages that they could get, right? Not because of the factor endowments. So what about the what factors they think the role of the entrepreneurship, innovation, and somehow the luck, right? Luck, I think in this context, they're saying, the new trade theorists, they use the term luck. I think what they meant was like the right momentum, right place, right time. Because if you're at the right place, right time, suddenly you have the first opportunity, right? Because if you were at the wrong time, then you didn't get much. I don't know. Yeah, not the right time. Maybe you got new technology, very good knowledge, but you were not at the right place, not at the right time. Then I think the benefit would be quite minimum. You couldn't optimize, the benefits because you're not at the right place at the right time. So that's, I think, what they're saying. You could imagine like I don't know, like someone like Tesla, maybe, like Elon Musk, is of course his skills, right? We don't doubt about his technical skills, his entrepreneurship, his persistence, innovation, and something like that. But if you think about it, he was at the right momentum as well, like right time, in the world with I don't know, it's quite open, but we have a lot of problems with the global warming, social issues, and everything. And this guy came, I think, at the right generation, with the I don't know, the fissionary products, like the rockets and the electric vehicles and something like that, right? And the chips and so yeah, somehow what I think what they meant by luck was the right momentum, right place, right time. Like in the past, we saw a lot of brilliant people, but maybe they came from wrong generation, so they couldn't really optimize their potential, right, in the past. But no, yeah, it depends on the momentum that you are in also. But again, I think the major focus here is the entrepreneurship, innovation, first mover advantages. I think what the new tech theory is focusing. And then the last one here from Michael Porter, right, the Porter's diamond, we have the national competitive advantages. Right, national competitive advantages are affected by these four factors. The factor endowments, right, factor endowments that the country or the company has, and demand conditions in that location or in that country, and what about related and supporting industries, right? The supplies and also the distribution, we call it the value chain. You have the suppliers, you have the distributors, so supporting industries and related sectors. And of course, the firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, right? Rivalry within the industry. What about the strategy? Is the firm employing good strategy, whether it has proper structure in modern management, and what about the rivalry within the industry? I think this is quite strategic. I think when we discuss the international strategy, we'll come back to this framework again. So what about the government's influence here? So government could influence all components, all the components here, factor endowments, by how to, government could interfere to a certain level, the use of maybe natural resources, the labor, the regulation and everything about those production factors, and also demand condition, right? Government could interfere also. And I mean, this theory, right, the Porter's diamond, we are saying that all the four components is required to boost competitive performance, right? to boost the performance of a certain company or a certain country. And when we talk about national competitiveness, more about a country, but also about the companies within that country. So once again, according to Michael Porter, government could interfere, could influence to a certain level by the components of the diamond. Could be positive, could be negative, this kind of interference. And if Porter is correct, we would expect the model to predict an international trade. So we are saying that a more competitive nation, more competitive country will dominate, the trade with higher quality products, as well as more economical or cheaper, higher quality, right? And the domination is because of, again, the four components here, right? More production factors available, stronger demand conditions in the domestic market. It has like more related and supporting industries there, from the value chain point of view, and also better strategy, more appropriate structure, and stronger rivalry within the industry at home. The rivalry would push every player to devise better strategy, to come up with higher quality products and some other positive things there. I think this is the last theory that we are seeing today, right? Explaining the international trade. again, this is by no means exhaustive. We have many theories evolving all the time, right? In the literature, also in practice. But I think we have seen the major frameworks, major theories in international trade. I hope you enjoy today's session, and we'll meet again in the next topic. Thank you.